I worked as a third-party Amazon delivery driver for almost a year in Phoenix, Arizona, and this happened near the end of that period. At the time, I was taking a lot of remote routes because they usually paid a little better, and almost nobody wanted to do them. They were neighborhoods farther outside the city, areas with scattered houses, large properties, and streets where you could drive for several minutes without seeing anyone outside. That day had started normally, but it was already becoming exhausting because I was near the end of the route and still had a few deliveries left close to sunset. It was late October, so it got dark relatively early. I remember the heat from the day had dropped significantly, and that dry Arizona wind started blowing in the late afternoon, kicking dust up along the sides of the road. My van was almost empty by then, and I wanted to finish quickly, because the region I was in became extremely deserted after sunset. The Amazon GPS sent me to an isolated house on a dead-end street near Cave Creek. It wasn't exactly rural, but it also didn't feel like a normal neighborhood. The houses were far apart from each other, separated by fences, dry trees, and huge dirt lots. When I turned onto the street, I immediately noticed there was almost no public lighting. The sky was already beginning to darken, and the shadows made everything feel dim even before night fully arrived. The delivery house was practically at the end of the street. It was a large single-story beige house with a side garage and no lights on in the front. There was no car in the driveway, no sound of television, dogs, or anything suggesting movement. Honestly, it looked abandoned. I grabbed the package from the back of the van and walked to the front door while checking the app on my phone like I did with every delivery. The wind pushed dry plants across the concrete driveway, and I remember feeling that strange silence typical of isolated neighborhoods. You couldn't even hear birds at that hour. When I placed the package near the door and lowered my phone to take the delivery confirmation photo, I noticed something in my peripheral vision. The garage door was partially open, not fully, maybe around 40 centimeters off the ground, and someone was standing inside. At first, I thought it was just a shadow because the interior of the garage was almost completely dark compared to the fading daylight outside. But then I saw more clearly. It was a man, tall, standing motionless inside. He didn't move at all, didn't say anything, just stared directly at me while I took the picture of the package. What immediately bothered me was the fact that he stood there silently in the dark, without giving any normal sign of acknowledgement. Most people at least wave, say thank you, or make some kind of gesture when they notice the delivery driver. That guy didn't, he just stood there staring at me without moving. Right away, I felt that immediate discomfort you learn to recognize when working delivery jobs. You enter hundreds of different properties every week, so you quickly develop a sense of when something feels wrong. Even so, I tried acting normal. I nodded quickly as a greeting and turned around to head back to the van. The man didn't respond, didn't move. While walking down the driveway, I could still feel him staring at my back. I remember the sensation clearly because I started walking faster without even realizing it. The sky was turning dark orange by then, and the growing shadows on the street made everything feel worse. When I got close to the van, I discreetly glanced back over my shoulder, expecting to see him still standing inside the garage. But the man was gone. The garage remained partially open, just as dark as before, except now it was empty. That sent an instant chill through me because I hadn't heard footsteps, the garage door moving, nothing. The street was so silent that any movement should have been noticeable. Even while trying to rationalize it, I felt that awful anxiety growing in my chest. I quickly climbed into the driver's seat and started putting on my seatbelt while the app loaded the next stop. That was when I noticed movement in the side mirror. The same man was slowly crossing the front yard toward the van. He wasn't running, wasn't gesturing. He was just slowly walking while staring directly at the vehicle. And there was something wrong with the way he moved. He didn't look like someone casually approaching to talk. He looked like someone trying to get closer without drawing attention. My heart started pounding instantly. I started the van immediately and threw it into reverse almost without thinking. When I checked the mirror again, I realized he was already much closer than I had originally thought. That was when I heard a metallic sound from behind the van. A sharp impact. Immediately, a notification appeared on the dashboard warning that one of the rear doors was open. My stomach dropped instantly. I was absolutely certain I had locked everything before stepping out for the delivery. I quickly looked into the rearview mirror trying to see the back compartment, but the cargo area was too dark at that hour. And the worst part was realizing that while I stared at the dashboard, the man kept walking toward the van without reacting at all to the fact I was clearly trying to leave quickly. I slammed the brake again because part of my brain suddenly panicked at the thought that someone might already be inside the cargo compartment. At that moment, my mind started racing too fast. Part of me wanted to hit the gas and get out immediately. The other part couldn't stop thinking that maybe someone had climbed into the back of the van while I was distracted staring at the garage. And that felt entirely possible because I had left the vehicle running in quick delivery mode, like practically every driver does to save time. The problem was that the street was completely empty. No other houses seemed occupied. No passing cars. Nothing. Just that man slowly approaching the van while the evening light disappeared fast. I looked again in the rearview mirror trying to spot movement inside the cargo compartment, but it was too dark back there. The shelves and boxes created strange shadows as the idling van vibrated. My heart was pounding so hard that my hands started tingling against the steering wheel. Then I heard another sound from the back. A short metallic scrape followed by a soft impact. It sounded like something moving inside. A wave of cold shot through my entire body instantly. The man was now close enough for me to clearly see his face. Thin, heavily sunburned skin, short beard, completely blank expression. And he kept staring directly at the van without saying a single word. That was when I decided to get out of there immediately. I shifted into drive and accelerated hard. The van kicked dust up along the side of the road as I made the turn without even properly looking. In the side mirror, I could still see the man standing in the middle of the driveway watching the van leave. But the problem wasn't over. The warning about the rear door being open was still lit on the dashboard. And a few seconds later, I clearly heard a noise from the cargo compartment behind me. Something fell onto the metal floor of the van. It didn't sound like a package sliding. It sounded like human weight shifting. My stomach dropped instantly. I looked desperately into the rearview mirror trying to see something between the boxes and shelves. But the rear of the van bounced too much on the uneven dirt road. I started driving much faster than I should have because I just wanted to reach a busy main road. The problem was that the area stayed deserted for several more minutes. Then I heard quiet breathing behind me. Not loud, not exaggerated. Just someone breathing inside the van. When I heard that breathing, my whole body went cold in a way I had never experienced before. It was instant. I remember exactly the feeling of my hands slightly slipping on the steering wheel from sweat while trying to keep driving without losing control of the van. The breathing came from behind me, muffled by the engine noise and the vibration of boxes in the cargo area. But it was there, and it sounded far too close. My first instinct was to look again into the rearview mirror, but I could barely see anything because the outside light was disappearing rapidly. The sky had turned a deep dark blue and the back of the van looked completely black beyond the shadows of the shelves. I started desperately thinking about what to do. I couldn't just stop in the middle of that isolated road. But I also couldn't continue to my next address with someone possibly hiding back there. I grabbed the company radio with one hand and tried contacting another driver nearby, but the signal kept failing in that remote area. By that point, my breathing had become short and fast. Then I heard another sound behind me, the faint scrape of a shoe sole dragging across the metal floor, like someone slowly changing position. I accelerated even more, trying to reach the main avenue that appeared on the GPS about 3 minutes ahead. It felt much farther away at that moment. My mind couldn't stop imagining someone hidden between the shelves waiting for the van to slow down. Several times I thought about pulling onto the shoulder and running, but the road was completely empty and dark. If someone really was back there, I would be alone in the middle of nowhere. That was when I heard a sharp sound directly behind the driver's seat. Very close, like a hand hitting the metal divider between the cab and the cargo compartment. I nearly lost control of the van instantly. My heart pounded so hard I started feeling dizzy. Then came something even worse. A low male voice behind me saying only, "Keep driving." At that moment, my brain went into complete panic because the voice didn't sound nervous or aggressive. It sounded calm, controlled, like the person knew exactly the effect those words were having on me. I couldn't respond at all. I just kept driving while staring straight ahead at the road, feeling every muscle in my body frozen with fear. After he said that, I experienced a very strange physical reaction. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely keep the van straight on the road. The worst part was the tone of his voice. He didn't sound like someone desperate to steal the vehicle or escape. He sounded completely comfortable back there. That terrified me far more. I kept trying to think quickly of some way out while driving. My phone was mounted on the dashboard with the GPS open, but I was afraid to grab it or make any sudden movement that might provoke whoever was behind me. The road finally started connecting to a larger, better-lit avenue, and I remember feeling a small sense of relief when I saw headlights from other vehicles in the distance. But at the same time, I started imagining what would happen if I slowed down at a traffic light or stopped at an intersection. The breathing behind me remained quiet and steady. Occasionally, I could hear boxes shifting slightly like he was adjusting his weight between the shelves. Then I heard another sound near the metal divider, something hard scraping against the metal. It sounded like a tool or some heavy object touching the partition behind me. My stomach sank again immediately. And that was when I decided I had to do something before reaching the busy avenue. I remembered that a few miles ahead there was a large gas station where truckers usually stopped during the night. The place was brightly lit and normally crowded even late at night. So I started driving directly there while trying to act as normal as possible. I didn't say anything, didn't look back. I just followed the GPS while my heart felt like it was trying to burst through my throat. The man behind me stayed silent almost the entire drive. That was worse than if he had been yelling threats. The silence made my mind imagine much worse things. When I finally turned into the brightly lit gas station entrance, I immediately heard movement behind the divider. Fast movement this time, like he had realized where I was pulling in. I slammed on the brakes near the pumps and started honking continuously. Instantly, several truckers and 2 people near the convenience store turned toward the van. That was when I heard a loud impact from the cargo compartment, followed by the metallic sound of the rear doors flying open. Before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt, I saw in the side mirror someone jumping out of the back of the van and sprinting toward the dark, open land beside the station. Everything happened within seconds. One of the truckers even chased after him for several yards, but the man disappeared quickly into the desert darkness beyond the road. I got out of the van practically stumbling because I was so shaken. My legs felt weak and my hands were still trembling while I tried explaining to the people at the station what had just happened. One of the truckers immediately asked whether the man had been armed because he had seen something shining in his hand while he ran into the dark. At that moment, I could barely think clearly enough to answer. Everything felt scrambled in my head from the adrenaline. Another man walked with me to the back of the van while I tried catching my breath. Both rear doors were completely open, and several boxes had fallen onto the metal floor during the escape. The interior still felt hot and suffocating from an entire day of deliveries in Arizona, mixed with the smell of dust and cardboard. That was when I noticed something that instantly sent chills through me. Some of the boxes had been deliberately moved out of place. It didn't look like someone quickly trying to steal packages. It looked like someone creating enough space to hide inside unnoticed. One of the truckers found dirty shoe prints on the metal floor near the cab divider, directly behind my seat. When I saw that, my stomach sank because I realized just how close that man had been to me the entire time while I drove alone through those dark roads. The police arrived about 20 minutes later and questioned me for nearly an hour at the station. They also went to the delivery house, but nobody answered at the property. According to one of the officers, the house appeared partially abandoned when they looked through the garage side windows. They found no car, barely any furniture, and no clear signs of recent residents. That made me feel even worse because it meant the delivery might have been used solely to lure someone there. The last thing that truly disturbed me happened when one of the officers asked me to show him the recipient's name in the delivery app. The address was still saved in my route history, but when he quickly checked it in their system, he discovered the property had been vacant for months and had recently gone through foreclosure. Nobody should have been living there. After that night, I continued working deliveries for a few more weeks, but I never again managed to do isolated routes alone without becoming paranoid every time I opened the back of the van. And honestly, even now, whenever I see a garage partially open during a delivery, I still remember that man standing motionless in the dark, staring directly at me without saying a word. Because if I had stopped the van on that deserted road instead of driving to the gas station, I genuinely don't know what would have happened to me inside that vehicle. Story 2. I had been doing app-based deliveries in St. Louis for about 8 months when this happened. At the time, I was trying to save money because I had just left a steady warehouse job, and delivery work was the only thing paying my bills quickly. I usually worked late because overnight orders gave better tips, especially on weekends. The problem was that they also sent us to some really strange neighborhoods and apartment buildings near downtown. That night was a Tuesday, and it was already close to midnight when I thought about ending my shift and going home. I was already tired, it was cold, and the light rain that had started earlier made the streets practically empty. Then one more order popped up. The restaurant was close to me and the delivery looked relatively quick, so I accepted it. The address was an old apartment complex in a rougher area of downtown St. Louis, full of old red brick buildings and nearly empty parking lots. While driving there, I started noticing how little movement there was on the streets. No pedestrians, no traffic. Just traffic lights changing on their own in the middle of the light rain, and yellowish streetlights reflecting off the wet asphalt. When I turned onto the building street, I immediately got that bad feeling of being somewhere abandoned. Half the windows were dark and several of the building's exterior lights looked burned out. The building itself looked very old. It had 3 floors, a narrow concrete entrance, and a glass front door covered in old marks and torn-off stickers. The side parking lot was almost empty except for an old dirt-covered car near the fence. As soon as I parked, I checked the delivery instructions again in the app. It only said, "3rd floor, leave at the door, don't knock." No name. No extra information besides the apartment number, 3B. I grabbed the bag of food and entered the building. The main hallway smelled like old cigarettes, dampness, and cheap cleaning products. Some lights flickered weakly on the ceiling, and I could hear a television playing in some distant apartment, but overall the building felt far too quiet. The elevator was broken because there was a dented sign saying "out of service," so I started climbing the narrow staircase. The closer I got to the 3rd floor, the worse the silence seemed to become. The 2nd floor still had some lights on and you could hear people talking behind closed doors. But the 3rd floor was practically dark. Just one weak light at the end of the hallway illuminated part of the old carpet and the stained walls. When I reached the area looking for apartment 3B, I noticed something immediately strange. One of the doors in the middle of the hallway had no number at all. Just fresh tape marks ripped off the wood like someone had recently removed the identification. I stopped in the hallway trying to figure out if that was really the correct apartment. I checked the app several times to confirm the number because every other door had a normal identification plate above the handle. That one was the only one without anything. The entire hallway was silent in a strange way, and the old carpet completely muffled my footsteps. I could hear a faint buzzing sound coming from the weak light at the end of the hallway, and occasionally distant pipe noises inside the walls. But near that door there was no sound at all. No television, no conversation, no movement. Even so, the app's GPS clearly showed I was exactly at the correct delivery location. My first thought was that maybe the number had fallen off or been removed recently. That happens a lot in old buildings. But the tape marks on the wood looked too fresh. You could still see some of the glue shining near the peephole. I started feeling that familiar discomfort of a strange late-night delivery, but I tried acting normally. I slowly crouched down and placed the food bag near the wall exactly as the instructions requested. That was when I heard a sound coming from right behind the door. A very faint metallic click, like someone slowly unlocking a lock. My whole body tensed instantly. I stood up quickly, staring at the door while hearing another click from the handle. It didn't sound like someone opening the door normally to grab food. It sounded too slow, too deliberate. The narrow hallway became even quieter at that moment, and I could hear my own breathing inside that suffocating building. Then the door slowly opened a few inches. Very slowly. First, I could only see the darkness inside the apartment because no lights were on. Then the door opened a little more and I saw a man standing behind it. Tall, thin, wearing a dark hoodie. He didn't say anything, didn't look at the food on the floor. He just stood there staring at me. And immediately I noticed something else that made my stomach turn cold. He was holding something behind his back with one hand. I couldn't fully see the object because it was hidden, but I could clearly tell his arm was tense, holding something long near his waist. The worst part was his position. The door had opened just enough for him to completely block the narrow hallway between me and the stairs. And he remained motionless, staring directly at me without saying a single word. At that moment, I felt my brain trying to rationalize the situation, while my body already understood something was seriously wrong. Part of me thought maybe it was just some weird guy trying to scare a delivery driver. Another part immediately realized it didn't feel like a joke at all. The man didn't seem surprised to see me there. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look confused. He looked far too calm. That was what scared me the most. The entire hallway was silent except for the faint buzzing of the light at the end of the floor. I remember smelling strong mold coming from the open apartment behind him, mixed with old cigarette smoke. I tried to keep my voice normal and said something like, "Delivery order." The man kept staring at me silently for a few seconds. He didn't even look at the food bag on the floor. He just kept standing there staring at me in that strange way while keeping his arm hidden behind his back. Then he took one slow step forward without leaving the doorway. During that movement, I heard a small metallic sound coming from the hidden object. My heart instantly started racing. It didn't sound like a phone or keys. It sounded like heavy metal touching the wall or the doorknob. I instinctively started backing away down the hallway without taking my eyes off him. The worst part was that the stairs were behind the man, meaning I would have to pass relatively close to him to get out. My entire body was on alert at that moment. Cold hands, short breathing, that adrenaline rush making everything feel even quieter. Then the man finally said something, very softly, almost too calm for the situation. He asked, "Did you come alone?" That terrified me because it wasn't a normal question from someone receiving food. I answered quickly with something like, "There are more people downstairs," even though it was a lie. Right away, I noticed a subtle change in his expression. Not exactly surprise, more like someone reconsidering something. Then I heard another sound coming from the dark apartment behind him. A quick movement, like someone bumping into furniture inside. My stomach immediately dropped because I realized he might not have been alone in that apartment. The man turned his head for just a second toward the dark interior, and during that brief movement, I caught a glimpse of what he had hidden behind his back. It looked like a long piece of metal, maybe a pipe or a heavy tool. The moment I realized that, my body went into real panic mode. Not that initial nervousness from a strange situation, actual physical fear. I started backing away faster down the hallway while trying to keep my voice steady without sounding desperate. The man remained standing in the doorway, staring directly at me, while partially hiding that object behind his leg. The hallway felt even narrower at that moment. The old walls, the carpet muffling footsteps, the weak flickering light at the end of the floor. Everything created a horrible feeling of being trapped there. Then I heard another sound from the dark apartment, this time clearer. Footsteps. Slow. Someone approaching the entrance from inside. The man glanced back quickly once again, and that was enough for me to turn and start walking quickly toward the stairs. I didn't immediately run because I still feared provoking an even worse reaction, but my heart was pounding so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. As I moved away, I heard the apartment door open wider behind me. Then footsteps on the hallway carpet, not fast, just steady, following me. At that point, I completely lost any attempt to seem calm and started running toward the stairs. The entire hallway felt like it was swaying from the adrenaline. My shoes slightly slipped on the old carpet when I turned the corner at the staircase and started rushing down. That was when I heard a male voice behind me in the hallway say, "Hey." Not yelling, just loud enough for me to hear clearly. That scared me even more because it sounded like someone trying to make me stop without drawing attention from the whole building. I kept descending, almost jumping steps while hearing footsteps right above me. The metal staircase vibrated from the impact of their steps, and I could clearly tell more than one person was coming down. When I reached the second floor, I nearly collided with a resident stepping out of an apartment. I think that was probably what prevented something worse from happening. The footsteps behind me immediately slowed down. I didn't even stop to explain anything. I kept running down to the main entrance. I only slowed down after bursting through the glass front door and feeling the cold air from the street hit my face. I ran to my car while frantically watching the building entrance as I unlocked the doors with shaking hands. And seconds before getting into the vehicle, I looked up toward the third floor. There were two people standing there watching from the dark hallway window. I got into the car so fast I nearly dropped my keys onto the floorboard. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely fit the key into the ignition. While starting the engine, I kept staring at the third floor window. The two silhouettes were still standing there in the darkness. They didn't gesture, they didn't step away from the window, they just watched. The weak building lighting made it impossible to see their faces, but it was obvious they were looking directly at the street, probably at me. At that moment, my brain finally started processing how wrong that entire situation had been. The apartment without a number, the instructions saying not to knock, the man slowly opening the door while holding something hidden, and especially the fact that there was another person inside that dark apartment waiting silently. I shifted into drive and got out of there immediately. But even while driving away, I still felt that horrible sensation that something very bad had almost happened in that hallway. The light rain kept falling over the empty streets of St. Louis while I tried to breathe normally again. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel that I had to pull over at a convenience store a few blocks away because I simply couldn't focus enough to drive properly. I stayed parked in the brightly lit convenience store lot for almost 20 minutes trying to calm down before heading home. While sitting there, I started checking the delivery app again and noticed something else strange. The order had already been automatically marked as completed, but there was no real name attached to the account. Just a random string of letters and numbers. There was also no profile picture or visible history of previous deliveries. That made me feel even worse because it looked like an account created specifically for that order. The next day, I contacted app support trying to report what had happened. The representative basically treated it like a normal suspicious situation and said they would investigate internally. I never heard back. A few weeks later, out of curiosity, I passed by that same street during the daytime while making other deliveries. The building was still there, but I discovered something that instantly gave me chills. According to a resident I found smoking outside, the apartment I went to that night had been empty for months. He even mentioned that the door without a number had recently been sealed by the landlord after problems with squatters entering the abandoned building next door. To this day, I still don't know who those men were or what exactly they were waiting for in that dark apartment. But honestly, I think that if I had stepped a few more feet down that hallway instead of backing away immediately, that delivery probably would have ended much worse for me. Story 3. I had been doing app-based deliveries in rural Tennessee for about 6 months when this happened. At the time, I was trying to supplement my income because my main job at a construction supply store had drastically reduced my hours. I usually worked mostly at night because that was when orders increased in the small towns around the area. The problem was that it also meant taking deliveries on isolated roads and in neighborhoods that became practically deserted after a certain hour. That specific night, a severe storm had been raging since late afternoon. Heavy rain, wind, constant thunder. One of those typical southern United States storms that makes the streets completely empty. Even so, I kept working because the app significantly increased delivery pay on nights like that. It was already past 10:30 p.m. when I thought about ending my shift and heading home. But then one more order appeared, paying far above normal. The restaurant was close to me and the route looked relatively short on the map, so I accepted it without thinking much about it. The address was in an isolated area near a small town outside Murfreesboro. As I drove in that direction, I started noticing the streets becoming emptier and emptier. Trees swayed violently in the wind, and the rain hit so hard against the windshield that the wipers could barely keep up. In several stretches of road, there was practically no lighting besides my headlights, reflecting off the water pooling on the asphalt. After about 15 minutes driving through nearly pitch-black roads, the GPS finally directed me onto a narrow street filled with old houses and large properties. Some looked abandoned, others had only a faint porch light on. The problem was that the delivery house looked completely empty. As soon as I parked in front of the address, I immediately realized something felt wrong. The house was small, single-story, with peeling paint and part of the fence collapsed on one side. No lights on, no car in the driveway. The windows were completely dark, and some looked covered with old curtains or cardboard. The heavy rain made everything worse because it was hard to see beyond my headlights illuminating the front of the property. Even so, the app clearly displayed the message, "Customer waiting at the door." I stayed inside the car staring at the screen several times, trying to understand if I had arrived at the wrong address. But the GPS confirmed the location. The smell of wet rain mixed with mud seeped through the cracks of the car while I stared at the completely silent house. No movement inside. No television on. Nothing. Honestly, it looked abandoned for months. I stayed parked inside the car for several minutes trying to decide what to do. The rain hit so hard against the roof of the vehicle that it drowned out almost every other sound from the street. The windshield wipers kept moving non-stop, pushing water side to side while the headlights partially illuminated the front of the house. The more I looked, the more wrong the place seemed. The porch was covered in wet leaves gathered in the corners, and part of the wood near the door looked rotten. It didn't look like the home of someone waiting for food that late at night. Even so, the app continued showing that the customer was active and waiting for the delivery. I grabbed my phone to call because honestly I didn't want to leave the car during that storm to knock on a seemingly abandoned house. While waiting for the call to connect, I kept staring at the front door trying to notice any movement. Nothing happened. No lights turned on. No shadow appeared in the windows. The call went straight to voicemail. That made my bad feeling even stronger. So I decided to send a message through the app asking if the address was correct. A few seconds later, my phone immediately vibrated with a reply. "I can see you out there." My stomach turned cold instantly. I remember the feeling perfectly because until then I had still been trying to rationalize the entire situation. Maybe someone lived in the back. Maybe the power was out because of the storm, but that message completely changed the atmosphere. I stared at the screen for several seconds trying to understand from where exactly the person was watching me. The car headlights only illuminated the front of the house, and the heavy rain made it impossible to see properly beyond the porch. I started looking at the windows trying to find any sign of movement inside, but everything remained completely dark. Then I heard a sound coming from the rear of the car. Tap. Very soft. Like someone tapping fingers against the glass. My whole body instantly froze. The sound had come from the blind spot behind the vehicle, on the side I couldn't see because of the rain. A few seconds later, I heard another tap. Slower. Tap. Tap. This time it didn't sound like tree branches or rain. It clearly sounded like someone calmly tapping on the rear window. My heart started pounding so hard that I felt my hands growing cold on the steering wheel. And the worst part was that I couldn't see absolutely anything in the rearview mirror, besides water streaming down the dark glass behind me. At that moment, I felt a type of fear very different from the normal nervousness of a strange delivery. It was the kind of physical sensation that puts your whole body on alert before your mind can even properly process what's happening. I stayed completely still, gripping the steering wheel, while trying to see something through the rearview mirror. All I could see was rain running down the glass and distorted reflections of my headlights on the wet asphalt behind the car. Then came another knock, stronger this time. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. Like someone trying to make it clear they were standing right there behind me. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. I picked up my phone again almost automatically and looked at the message once more. "I can see you out there." At that moment, I started desperately thinking about where exactly that person was watching me from. The house remained completely dark. No shadows in the windows, no movement on the porch. Even so, someone knew exactly that I was sitting there inside the car. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message from the customer. "Don't leave yet." I immediately put the car into reverse without even thinking about the delivery anymore. But before accelerating, I instinctively looked at the right side mirror. That was when I saw a silhouette standing very close to the rear of the car, almost touching the vehicle. I couldn't make out a face or details because the rain was absurdly heavy and the street lighting was practically non-existent. But I could clearly see a tall figure wearing dark clothing standing motionless behind the car, staring in my direction. My entire body went into panic instantly. I reversed so fast that the tires slid across the water pooling on the street. The car swayed violently and I nearly crashed into the neighboring fence while trying to turn around. When I finally managed to straighten the vehicle and accelerate forward, I glanced quickly into the mirror expecting to see the person left behind in the street. But the silhouette was gone. The back of the street looked completely empty except for the heavy rain falling under the headlights. That terrified me even more because I had just seen someone standing only a few feet from the car. I kept driving fast, trying to get out of that street as quickly as possible, while my hands shook so badly on the steering wheel that I could barely maintain control. As I drove farther away from the street, I started realizing how uncontrolled my breathing had become. I could barely catch my breath because my body was still in a complete state of alert. The storm made everything worse. The sound of rain on the roof of the car was so loud it made it impossible to hear anything else from the road. I kept driving quickly, trying to reach a larger illuminated avenue while compulsively checking my mirrors. Several times I thought I saw headlights appearing behind me through the rain, only for them to disappear again around dark curves in the road. My phone kept vibrating in the mount with app notifications, and that started making me even more nervous. I tried ignoring it for a few seconds, but curiosity eventually won. When I glanced quickly at the screen at an empty flashing yellow traffic light, I saw another message from the customer. "You left too fast." My stomach dropped instantly because that meant the person was somehow still tracking my movements. And right after that came another message. "Come back here." The feeling at that moment was horrible because it felt like someone was watching everything in real time without me knowing from where. I finally reached a busier road near a 24-hour gas station and immediately pulled into the brightly lit parking lot. I only truly slowed down when I saw other people outside filling pickup trucks with gas. I parked near the convenience store entrance trying to catch my breath. My hands were still trembling when I grabbed my phone to cancel the delivery and report the address as unsafe. That was when I noticed something else strange. The order had completely disappeared from the app. It no longer showed as active, canceled, or in progress. It had simply vanished from my recent history. I thought maybe it was a system error caused by poor internet during the storm, but it immediately made me uncomfortable. While trying to refresh the screen, I noticed movement in the parking lot through the rearview mirror. A dark car slowly entered the gas station and parked 2 rows behind my spot. The headlights stayed on for a few seconds before turning off. I couldn't see who was inside because of the rain and the tinted windows. But I instantly felt that bad sensation again. And a few seconds later, my phone vibrated with another message from an unknown number outside the app. "Now I can see you better." The moment I read that message, I felt such an intense chill through my body that my hands started tingling. My brain immediately tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe some random person had texted the wrong number, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The dark car remained parked 2 rows behind mine with the engine still running. Heavy rain streamed across the windows and distorted the gas station lights, so I could barely make out the inside of the vehicle. Even so, I had the very clear feeling that someone was watching me from inside. My first impulse was to get out of the car and run into the convenience store, but at the same time I was afraid of leaving my vehicle alone in the dark parking lot. I kept staring at the car through the mirror while trying to unlock my phone with trembling fingers. The message had no profile picture or saved name, just an unknown number. And before I could decide what to do, the car's headlights slowly turned back on. It wasn't the quick movement of someone leaving. It felt intentional, like they wanted my attention. My heart immediately started racing again. Then I saw the driver's door slowly open. A person stepped out of the car wearing a dark hoodie and stood beside the vehicle under the rain. I couldn't see any face from that distance, only the tall silhouette partially illuminated by the gas station lights. And the worst part was realizing they weren't walking toward the store, nor toward the gas pumps. They just stood there staring directly at my car. My whole body instantly went on alert. I grabbed my keys and started the car again without taking my eyes off that figure. That was when my phone vibrated once more. Another message. "You should have left the food." At that moment, I stopped trying to rationalize anything. I immediately shifted into drive and sped out of the gas station too fast, almost sliding across the water near the pumps. As I turned toward the road exit, I glanced quickly into the rearview mirror. The man was still standing in the rain watching my car pull away. And seconds later, the headlights of his vehicle turned on too. My stomach dropped because I realized the car was beginning to pull out of the parking lot behind me. As soon as I saw the headlights pulling onto the road behind me, I felt a level of panic I honestly had never experienced before. It no longer felt like coincidence or an isolated strange situation. It felt like actual pursuit. The rain continued pouring down so heavily that visibility was terrible, but I could still clearly see the car's headlights maintaining distance behind me on the wet highway. My heart was pounding so hard that I started feeling dizzy. I grabbed my phone trying to call the police while driving, but my hands were shaking too badly. And the worst part was that I was in a remote area filled with dark stretches between small towns, so there were practically no other cars on the road at that hour. I made a few random turns to confirm whether they were really following me. I turned onto a side street near a closed market. The car turned too. I continued onto another smaller road surrounded by trees and dark properties. The headlights stayed behind me, not close, just maintaining a constant distance. That scared me even more because it felt deliberate, like someone trying not to draw attention while following me. That was when I decided to stop trying to go home. My only thought at that moment was getting near people. I kept driving until I saw brighter lighting a few miles ahead. It was a small sheriff's station near a state highway. The moment I recognized the building, I practically threw the car into the front parking lot. I didn't even turn off the engine. I ran through the rain toward the entrance while frantically looking back at the road behind me. The dark car slowed down when it saw where I had stopped. Its headlights illuminated the wet sheriff station parking lot for several seconds. Then the vehicle kept driving straight without turning in. I remember perfectly that mixture of relief and fear while watching the headlights disappear into the rain in the distance. The deputies let me stay inside for a while as I tried to explain everything that had happened. When they checked the delivery address, they discovered the house had officially been vacant for almost a year after the death of the previous owner. No order should have been placed from there. The worst part was that the number used on the app and in the messages was already disconnected just minutes later. I still do delivery work today, but I never again accept late-night deliveries in isolated areas during bad weather. Because honestly, I believe that if I had stepped out of that car at that dark house that night, something much worse could have happened to me. Story 4. I was doing food delivery through an app in Oklahoma City when this happened. At the time, I was working practically every late night because orders near the highways usually paid better, especially at hotels and truck stops. I was 26 years old and trying to save money after losing my job at a mechanic shop a few months earlier. The problem with working late at night in Oklahoma is that many areas near the highways become completely deserted after a certain hour. There are lots of cheap motels, old hotels, and empty roads stretching for miles. That specific night, I was already about to end my shift because it was almost 2 in the morning, and that heavy exhaustion after hours of driving was starting to hit me. The weather was humid and windy, typical of summer nights there. The city was practically dead at that hour, except for a few 24-hour gas stations and trucks passing on the interstate. That was when one more relatively expensive order appeared from a fast food restaurant near Interstate 40. The delivery address was a cheap hotel located right off the highway exit. I thought about declining because I already wanted to go home, but the payout was too high to ignore, so I picked up the food and drove there. When I arrived at the hotel, the first thing that caught my attention was the nearly empty parking lot. There were maybe 3 cars scattered near the entrance, all old and covered in dust. The building looked like one of those old roadside hotels that had probably seen better days in the 90s and slowly became abandoned over time. The neon sign out front flickered with missing letters and half the exterior lights were burned out. As soon as I parked, I felt that immediate discomfort certain places give you during the middle of the night. There was nobody walking outside. No illuminated windows except one on the ground floor near the reception area. I grabbed the bag of food and walked inside. The lobby smelled like old cigarettes, damp carpet, and cheap cleaning products. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, and the television behind the counter was turned on silently to some random channel. The receptionist sat alone looking at his phone. Thin man, maybe around 50 years old, exhausted expression. He barely looked at me when I said I had a delivery. He just glanced up quickly and said 214. Then he went back to his phone. I waited a few seconds, thinking he would point me in the right direction or call the room, but he said nothing else. He only vaguely pointed toward the stairwell hallway without even taking his eyes off the screen. I started climbing the stairs, already feeling that bad sensation growing stronger. The entire hotel seemed far too quiet, not the normal late-night silence of guests sleeping. It felt empty. As I climbed to the second floor, I could hear the strong wind hitting some metal door outside and the distant sound of trucks driving along the highway. When I reached the second-floor hallway, the atmosphere became even worse. The lights were dim and yellowish, several flickering softly overhead. The old carpet completely muffled my footsteps, and there was a strong smell of mold mixed with cigarette smoke soaked into the walls. The hallway looked much longer than it should have because of the poor lighting. That was when I started noticing something else strange. Several doors were slightly open. Not fully open, just small, dark cracks, maybe 4 or 5 rooms scattered along the hallway. At first I tried rationalizing it by thinking guests might have been smoking or using ventilation locks, but the farther I walked, the more wrong it felt. No televisions on, no conversations, no sounds coming from inside those partially open rooms, just darkness behind the cracks. I kept walking looking for room 214 while feeling the tension building in my body. My phone was almost dead and the internet connection inside the hotel kept failing, so the app took forever to load anything. I passed room 208, then 210, then 212, and as I approached the end of the hallway, I started noticing the lighting there was even worse. One of the ceiling bulbs flickered constantly, making shadows move across the walls. That was when I found room 214, and I immediately realized something was wrong. The door was already open, not a few inches like the others. It was open enough to see part of the completely dark room inside. No lights on, no television, nothing. I stood in front of the door trying to decide whether to call out or simply leave the food on the floor. Honestly, I wanted to leave immediately at that moment. There was something deeply wrong about that entire floor. Even so, I tried acting professional and quietly said, "Delivery," toward the dark opening. No response came from inside, just silence. And then, before I could back away, I heard quick footsteps coming from the hallway behind me. The moment I heard those footsteps, my entire body froze. It didn't sound like someone walking normally through the hallway. It sounded like a short sprint, fast, like someone had started moving the second I stopped in front of room 214. I immediately turned around and saw movement near the darkest part of the hallway. I couldn't make out a face or details because the flickering lighting distorted everything, but I could clearly see a silhouette quickly retreating between the partially open doors. My heart started pounding instantly. The worst part was the silence afterward. No door slamming, no voices. Just that muffled hallway and the low buzz of the fluorescent lights. My instinct at that moment was simply to leave, but before I could step away, I heard another sound coming from room 214 behind me. A soft creak from the floor, like someone shifting their weight inside the dark room. My stomach dropped immediately because it meant someone was in there too. I was literally trapped between the hallway behind me and the open room in front of me, without knowing which situation felt worse. The food bag was still in my hand, and I clearly remember the plastic trembling because my hands had started sweating cold. I tried to keep my voice steady and said something like, "I'm leaving it here by the door." No response. Then I heard a low sound coming from inside the room. Breathing, not loud. Just someone breathing slowly in the dark. My whole body went on alert at that point. I started backing away slowly down the hallway without taking my eyes off the opening in the door. And that was when something else frightened me even more. As I moved away, I noticed movement in one of the partially open doors several rooms behind me. The crack slowly widened a little more, very slowly, like someone inside the dark room watching the hallway. Then another door farther away seemed to move too. At that moment, I got the horrible feeling that there were multiple people on that floor silently watching. The hallway felt completely different now. Not empty, just far too quiet. Then I heard footsteps again behind me. Closer this time, running quickly over the muffled carpet. At that point, I completely panicked. I stopped thinking about the delivery, the app, or anything else. I immediately turned and started walking quickly toward the stairs, trying not to slip on the old carpet. The footsteps behind me continued for a few seconds, fast and muffled, but I didn't have the courage to look back again. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it echoed inside that silent hallway. As I passed the other partially open doors, I started noticing slight movement in the cracks. Shadows. Like people slowly approaching the openings to watch me pass. No voices. No doors fully opening. Just that horrible sensation of being watched from multiple points in the hallway at the same time. The wind outside made something metallic slam repeatedly against the building, and mixed with the buzzing lights, it made everything even worse. When I finally reached the stairwell, I practically ran down the steps. That was when I clearly heard a male voice behind me in the hallway saying, "Hey." Quiet. Calm. Not shouted. That terrified me because it sounded like someone trying to make me stop without drawing attention. I kept going downstairs without looking back until I reached the lobby. My whole body was shaking at that point. As soon as I turned toward the reception desk, the first thing I noticed was that the receptionist was gone. The chair behind the desk was empty, and the television continued playing silently, illuminating part of the empty lobby. That made everything instantly worse because, until then, at least there had been someone at the front desk. Now the ground floor felt just as empty as the second floor. I started walking quickly toward the exit, still holding the bag of food without even realizing it, and before reaching the front door, I heard a sound coming from the stairwell hallway behind me. Slow footsteps descending. My whole body went cold instantly. When I glanced quickly over my shoulder, I saw a silhouette standing at the bottom of the stairs watching the lobby. I couldn't make out the face because of the poor lighting, but it looked like a tall person wearing a dark hoodie, and directly behind that figure, farther up the staircase, there seemed to be another person standing partially hidden in the shadows. At that moment, I practically ran out of the hotel. The warm night wind hit my face the second I pushed through the glass door and headed straight for the parking lot, nearly tripping over the wet curb. My car sat alone near the side of the building, and I remember feeling overwhelming panic while trying to unlock the doors as I kept staring at the hotel entrance. My hand shook so badly that I pressed the wrong button on the key twice before finally opening the vehicle. When I got inside and slammed the door shut, I immediately locked everything and sat staring at the illuminated lobby, trying to catch my breath. My heart felt completely out of control. A few seconds later, I saw movement behind the glass of the front entrance. The same tall silhouette appeared near the door, staring directly at the parking lot. Then another figure emerged farther back inside the dark lobby. Neither of them came outside, they just watched. And the strangest part was that neither of them seemed concerned about the food or the delivery. They seemed interested only in me. That was when I realized something else that instantly gave me chills. The food bag was still sitting on the passenger seat. I had never left it at room 214. I immediately shifted into drive and left the parking lot without even waiting for the app to register the delivery as incomplete. As I drove away along the highway, I started trying to rationalize everything in my head. Maybe they were just strange guests. Maybe some group using abandoned rooms in the hotel. But deep down, I knew the entire situation had felt far too wrong to be coincidence. The worst part came about 20 minutes later when I stopped at a brightly lit gas station to calm myself down. I opened the app again to report the failed delivery, but the order no longer appeared in my recent history, not active, not canceled. It simply didn't exist anymore. I assumed it was an internet glitch, so I tried searching for the address manually. That was when I noticed something else strange. The hotel barely appeared correctly on the app's maps. The next day, still disturbed by everything, I talked about the situation with another delivery driver who knew the highway area well, and his response immediately made me feel sick. He said that hotel had barely received guests in a long time, and that several drivers avoided taking deliveries there during the late night because strange things always happened on the second floor. To this day, I still don't know exactly what was happening in that hallway, or who those people watching through the partially open doors were. But honestly, I believe that if I had stepped into that dark room 214 instead of backing away, that night probably would have ended much worse for me. Story 5. I worked doing deliveries for a 24-hour pharmacy near Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for almost a year, and this happened near the end of that period. The pharmacy delivered medication during the late night hours to elderly people, patients recently discharged from the hospital, and people who couldn't drive. Most of the time it was peaceful. The problem was the remote addresses in the rural areas of Louisiana. Anyone familiar with that region knows how completely deserted the roads become at night. Lots of woods, flooded areas, very few houses, and almost no cell phone signal in many stretches. That night I was already close to ending my shift because it was after 1 in the morning and I was beyond exhausted. It was extremely hot even though it was the middle of the night, that heavy humid heat typical of the South. The car windows kept fogging up from the temperature difference caused by the air conditioning. That was when one final delivery appeared in the system. The address was in a remote rural area about 30 minutes outside the city. Normally, I would have declined because I hated driving dirt roads alone that late at night. But the note said it was important medication for a patient who had been waiting for hours. So I accepted it. I picked up the sealed bag from the pharmacy and started driving, following the GPS down roads that became increasingly empty and dark. After about 20 minutes of driving, the scenery had changed completely. There were no more gas stations, businesses, or streetlights, just a narrow road surrounded by trees, brush, and flooded land on both sides. The smell of wet dirt and vegetation drifted through the air vents every time the car passed through more humid areas. In some stretches, you could hear insects incredibly loudly even with the windows closed. The GPS eventually directed me onto a narrow dirt road full of potholes and dried mud from earlier rainstorms. My headlights illuminated almost nothing except trees and dust rising behind the car. That was when the app vibrated on the dashboard mount. When I glanced at it quickly, I saw that the order had been canceled. Instantly, I felt enormous relief because it gave me the perfect excuse to turn around without having to continue down that horrible road. But only a few seconds later, a message appeared through the app's internal chat. "Please keep coming." I thought it was strange because canceled orders normally end all communication immediately. Before I could even respond, another message arrived. "The person has been waiting for hours." That immediately made me uncomfortable because theoretically the system shouldn't allow communication after cancellation. I kept driving slowly down the dirt road while alternating my attention between the GPS and the incoming messages on my phone. Part of me felt guilty because I thought maybe there really was someone sick waiting for important medication in the middle of that rural area. But another part of me started thinking the entire thing felt wrong. The order had officially been canceled. So why was the chat still functioning? And why did the messages arrive almost instantly every time I slowed down or seemed hesitant? A few seconds later, another message came through. "You're close." My stomach tightened immediately. I looked through the windshield trying to spot a house light or mailbox anywhere along that dark road. But there was absolutely nothing besides trees and brush on both sides. The road felt too narrow even for two cars to properly pass each other. In several places, tree branches nearly brushed the roof of the car. The Louisiana humidity made everything feel heavy and suffocating even with the air conditioning running. Then I started noticing something else that made me nervous. The GPS was acting strangely. The map marker kept freezing and repositioning itself repeatedly like the signal was failing. And the most uncomfortable part was the constant feeling that I was driving deeper and deeper into the middle of nowhere, without having seen a single residence for several minutes. That was when I decided it wasn't worth continuing. I grabbed the phone from the mount and started looking for a safe place to turn around on the road. The problem was that it was far too narrow, full of dried mud and surrounded by deep ditches on both sides. I had to drive a little farther until I found a slightly wider stretch near an opening in the brush. While turning the steering wheel trying to maneuver the car without getting stuck, the phone vibrated again. "Don't leave." That gave me an instant chill because the message arrived exactly when I started turning around. My heart began racing at that point. And then the headlights illuminated movement coming from the side of the road. Two men stepped out of the woods on the right side, walking directly toward the car. They didn't appear walking down the road. They literally emerged from the dark trees already looking straight at me. One was tall and thin, wearing a cap. The other seemed shorter and heavier. Neither of them said anything. My entire body froze instantly. I immediately tried finishing the turn so I could accelerate out of there, but the rear tire partially slipped in the dried mud near the ditch. And at that exact moment, the cell phone signal completely disappeared from the screen. At that moment, my brain went into real panic. Not that initial nervousness from a strange situation, actual physical fear. My heart pounded so hard that my hands started tingling on the steering wheel while I tried getting the car out of there. The two men kept walking toward the vehicle without running, but quickly enough to close the distance within seconds. The headlights only partially illuminated their faces because the road was uneven and the car was still tilted during the turn. I remember noticing that both men were completely dry despite the heavy humidity and mud around the brush, as if they had only been waiting there a short time. I immediately grabbed my phone trying to call the police, but the screen displayed no service. No signal bars, no internet, Nothing. My stomach dropped instantly. Then I heard a loud sound on the passenger side, the door handle being pulled. Once. Then again. The shorter man was already beside the car trying to open the door while staring directly inside the vehicle. My entire body went cold because I immediately realized that, out of pure habit, I had unlocked the doors while making the turn. I hit the lock button automatically and heard the doors click shut almost at the exact same moment the man pulled the handle again. This time harder. The other man began slowly approaching the front of the car, staring directly through the windshield. Neither of them said a single word. That was one of the things that frightened me most afterward. There was no threat, no request for help. They seemed completely focused only on getting close to the vehicle. I tried accelerating again, but the rear tire kept slipping partially in the mud near the ditch. The car made that horrible sound of a tire spinning without traction, while the man at the passenger door continued yanking the handle repeatedly. At one point, he slammed his palm against the window hard enough to make me scream. My heart felt completely out of control in that moment. Then the man in front of the car raised a powerful flashlight directly at the windshield. The beam completely blinded me for several seconds. That was when I heard another sound coming from behind the vehicle. Fast footsteps on the dirt, like someone else approaching through the darkness behind the car. At that moment, I honestly thought they were going to get inside the car. My entire body was shaking while I tried thinking quickly about what to do. The flashlight beam still blinded the windshield, preventing me from properly seeing the road ahead. And the man at the passenger side wouldn't stop pulling the handle with increasingly aggressive movements. The sound of the metal rattling in the door has stayed in my head ever since. Then I clearly heard another person arriving behind the car. Quick footsteps on the dry dirt mixed with branches snapping in the brush. That terrified me because it meant there were probably 3 people waiting on that road. My brain started replaying every story I had ever heard about ambushes in rural areas. The car remained partially stuck in the mud near the ditch, and every time I accelerated, I could feel the rear sliding without moving forward. Then the man in front slammed his hand against the hood once, hard enough to shake the vehicle. And right after that, I heard his voice for the first time. Quiet, far too calm. He simply said, "Open the door." He didn't sound nervous. He didn't sound drunk. He sounded like someone completely used to doing this. That was when I had the only rational idea during that entire situation. I stopped accelerating for a second, shifted the car fully into reverse, and turned the wheel as hard as I could away from the ditch. The rear tire spun violently through the dried mud, and for a moment I thought I had completely gotten stuck. But then I felt the car finally jerk free with a hard lurch. The man beside the passenger door almost lost his balance when the vehicle suddenly moved. I slammed on the gas immediately without caring any more about the narrow road. The car kicked up dirt and rocks while shooting backward several feet, before finally managing to partially turn around. Through the mirror, I could still see the 2 men running toward the side of the road trying to move out of the headlights. And for a fraction of a second, the rear lights illuminated another person standing farther back near the trees. Tall, motionless, watching. My heart was pounding at an insane level while I sped down the dirt road, barely able to see because of the dust and adrenaline. The steering wheel vibrated violently in my hands because of the potholes, and all I could think about was reaching the main highway again, where there would be traffic and cell phone signal. I kept driving as fast as possible down that horrible road without even looking at the mirrors for several minutes. My whole body was still shaking so badly that I could barely keep the car straight over the potholes. The road felt endless at that moment. There was only darkness, trees, and the sound of the tires throwing dirt behind the car. Several times I thought I was going to lose control because my hands were slipping with sweat on the steering wheel. Then after several minutes of driving almost automatically, the cell phone signal suddenly returned. The bars appeared on the screen, and delayed notifications immediately started flooding in. The first thing I did was call 911 while continuing to drive. I must have been talking too fast because the dispatcher had to ask several times for me to repeat my approximate location. When I finally reached the paved highway again, I felt such intense relief that I nearly started crying inside the car. I kept driving until I found a brightly lit gas station near the highway and stopped there, trembling uncontrollably. Only then did I realize my legs were so weak that I could barely get out of the vehicle. The police arrived about 20 minutes later and listened to the entire story in the gas station parking lot. One of the officers returned with me to the entrance of the rural road to try locating the delivery address, but we never found any house matching the GPS location from that order. Nothing. Just stretches of woods, empty land, and a few properties extremely far apart from each other. The strangest part came later, when they checked the order through the pharmacy system. The address partially existed, but it was connected to a residence that had been abandoned for years after the death of the previous owner. And even worse, officially the order had been canceled before I even entered the dirt road, which meant those messages should never have continued appearing in my app. To this day, I still don't know who those men were or how they knew exactly where I was on that unlit road in the middle of the night. But honestly, I believe they were waiting for me to step out of the car or remain stuck there trying to turn around longer. And what scares me most even now is remembering that third person standing near the trees watching everything without approaching. Because it all felt planned from the very beginning.
Thank you very much for your company until the end. Your support is what gives life to this channel. If these stories have caught you, don't forget to leave your like and comment on your opinion. And if you are not yet part of our community, sign up now to receive the next real horror stories.